the locker room and between McDermott and Josh or the offense. And they talked about Brian Daboll in it. And here is a reference from it that kind of leads into my take. Thus, it's impossible not to ask one longtime Bill, as a player, who's close with all three individuals, one question. Did Buffalo keep the wrong coach? There's nothing but dead air on the other end of the phone for 13 seconds. Do I need to continue my silence, this player said, or are we good? So I thought about that when Tyler tweeted it out.
Awesome way to respond.
Right, yesterday. Yeah. And this is because I mentioned, hey, could they bring him back in the fold? But you bring him back in the fold now, it undermines Joe Brady entirely. Yeah. You can't do that. Also seems like there was friction between he and McDermott, he being Brian Daboll. Also, Josh Allen has picked his last two offensive coordinators. Like, he has had a real say in it. The question I have is this. If the Bills don't win the division, which right now they're favored not to do, and if they, for the first time in the Josh Allen MVP-ish era, go out in round one, and they fire Sean McDermott, because I think we all believe they probably would if they lose in round one of the playoffs. Would Brian Daboll, head coach of the Buffalo Bills, be a real possibility? Because Josh Allen loves him, and arguably he's played his best football with him. Obviously, Daboll would do it. There's not a question there. Do you think that is pie-in-the-sky nonsense or something that is on the board of possibilities?
Look, I don't rule out anything being a possibility. The first thing I want to say about friction between him and McDermott, so Brian was with me. He was my assistant in the secondary when we were in New England. Then he was my quarterback coach at the Jets. Then he was the offense coordinator for me at the Browns. He is not a friction guy. He is not a guy that's going to create any kind of problems on a staff. So that the idea that there's friction between him and the head coach, that's not how he's wired. It's inconceivable for me to imagine that was the case. Will he defend the things he believes in? Yeah, but he's not gonna undermine anything that the head coach is trying to achieve. In terms of him going back there in the short term, I get why people are talking about that, but if anything, he needs to decompress a little bit, get away from football for a while, and then if he wants to go back somewhere, go back a little bit later in the season. I think New England would actually be a great place for him to go back and console for a while. They're probably going to win the division. And let's say the Bills don't want him back. It'd be a nice place to go back to if the Bills didn't want you back, to just be like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll help out here for a little bit. So there's that. In terms of him becoming a head coach in Buffalo, when you do transition head coaches, there is an element of having to sell to the fan base. So it's a little bit tougher sell based off the way that things
But I think Bills fans love him.
Because
they feel like he helped Josh become Josh.
I can tell you definitively, nobody loves Buffalo, the city of Buffalo, more than Brian Daboll. He was raised there. He is a proud,
Buffalonian.
Buffalonian. So that would be great from a, hometown hero coming back. It's just whether the ownership could sell it. And if you're an owner that doesn't care whether or not, how people perceive you, and you're going to make the move because you think it's the best, then so be it. Robert Kraft did that by hiring Bill Belichick a long time ago when Bill was very much out of favor nationally.
Yeah, no, that Belichick's a great example because, look, I think Daboll, he obviously did a very good job his first year with the Giants, and I think he could go somewhere else and do a very good job. But with the Bills, you guys know a few years ago I was saying if the Bills don't get it done this year, McDermott should go. I think McDermott's a good coach. It seems to me like even if they do go out in the playoffs again in bad fashion, they just seem like they are going to keep McDermott, to me. Now, maybe I'm wrong. So I think he's there. He obviously said the right thing about we're not considering Daboll now. But if they go out in the first round, even if they just don't make the Super Bowl and the offense is a problem, I could see getting rid of Brady. I could see bringing Daboll back as an OC and with Josh. Now, and again, if McDermott ever got fired, then could he? Yeah. You can't see him as an OC?
I don't know. He just doesn't.
I
just think he's going to try to get a head coaching job.
Yeah. Brian Daboll is not coming back as an OC for Sean McDermott. If the Buffalo Bills struggle in the playoffs and don't win, you're going to just keep running it back with Sean McDermott. Then you're going to fire Joe Brady and then bring in Brian Daboll. That's not happening. That's we're just going in circles there at that point. Okay. This conversation can take so many different paths here. Because there's an unlimited way to look at this right now. And the problem is we have to project into the future of how the season can end. So before we start to just go through every single possible outcome here, let's just talk about, would this make the Buffalo Bills better? No matter what happens in the playoffs, right? No matter whether they win the division, lose the division, anything shy of obviously just winning the Super Bowl. Would this make them better? Now, what's interesting about that quote that Nick was reading and was talking about from an ex-player, at that point in time, Sean McDermott's stock was at seemingly an all-time low with the Buffalo Bills, and Brian Daboll's stock was at an all-time high. The Buffalo Bills were really struggling, and it was really kind of like, oh man, there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of issues surrounding around the Buffalo, but right, people were really souring. This is like, continuation from what happened in the 13-second game and then against the Bengals, right? Like things were really starting to pile on. And Brian Daboll was like, I'm the king of the world. I just took Daniel Jones to the playoffs. We won a playoff game, right? Like it was just, things were just up, 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 up. So when you get a snapshot in time like this, you just have to be careful. You just have to be careful because it's just a very specific time. But it doesn't invalidate it either. There's nothing but dead air on the other end of the phone for 13 seconds. That's interesting. It's a very specific amount of time. Do I need to continue my silence, this player said, or are we good? And I get it. And in a lot of ways, that's what everybody was saying about the Philadelphia Eagles with Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni. It's like, you let the real coach out the door. But then the Eagles were fortunate enough to go and win a Super Bowl. And so now it's like, you kind of continue to kick that can down the road. And now, Brian Daboll obviously gets fired. People are unhappy with him. You can make the argument that Brian Daboll did everything he could in New York. That New York is a bit of a clown show. They're getting rid of Saquon Barkley. They have no O-line. Who knows how much power Brian Daboll actually had with the construct. Colin always talks about Andy Reid fixes the O-line overnight. And it's like, well, Andy Reid has an insane amount of power with Kansas City. Andy Reid ultimately has final say over everything that happens there. I'm not so sure Brian Daboll does with the New York Giants. So it's a tricky one there. And when you fire Sean McDermott, it's like now you need a true defensive coordinator who can get the job done as well. So it is tricky. If Josh Allen truly feels like Brian Daboll brings out his best, which to be fair, players don't always know what's best for them. Players often don't know what's best for them, but it's still something to be taken into consideration for sure. If you believe that Brian Daboll is actually a great coach and that him and Josh Allen really worked, then the swing is worth taking from my viewpoint, because this team and this culture isn't fragile enough with Josh Allen. There's not a fragility to the culture and the sense of the locker room. That's not what the Bills would struggle with. This isn't the Miami Dolphins. This isn't the Cleveland Browns. This isn't the Carolina this is Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. They don't need to rebuild a culture, rebuild an identity. That's not what they need. They need high-level coaching. They got Josh Allen. Josh Allen's a leader. Josh Allen is him. No one questions that. There's no kind of like, is he, isn't he? They all know it. So there's no concerns in that regard. And plus, I believe that Brian Daboll can handle that in Buffalo if there is any type of slightly rocky moments, because he is attached to Josh Allen. It's different when you kind of have some rocky moments and like Tua is your quarterback, Daniel Jones is your quarterback, Bryce Young is your quarterback. Like you're just like, it becomes a lot harder to navigate. And obviously McDermott's going to say that about Joe Brady right now, right? That makes complete sense. And it's not like Joe Brady has been bad. It's not like you say Joe Brady is the reason why. I don't think he's been as great as some people like to talk about. I think Sean McDermott is definitely more of the problem than Joe Brady, but also I consistently year after year after year see Andy, McVay, Shanahan, et cetera, make life so much easier for their quarterbacks. And I do not consistently see that with the Buffalo Bills. And is there potential for Brian Daboll to make life easier for Josh Allen? You do that, you hit a home run. And then you just need to now hire the right defensive coach. And then you should go all in and just give buckets of money to whoever you think that defensive coordinator is. Even if you try to take a defensive coordinator from another team, or it's tough, because then you might have to look at college. It's not the easiest path. You can't just go and pluck. Best case scenario is a great defensive coach gets fired this season, and then you can just kind of say, hey, be our DC right now. Or if there's another defensive coach, like that's why the Eagles were so lucky that the Dolphins are so poorly run, because they're like, we're getting rid of Fangio, and the Eagles were like, okay, thank you, we'll take you. And that's why I said what the Bills needed to do was hire Ben Johnson and hire Fangio. Boom, elite offense, elite defense. Where would you be right now? That's what I called for the Buffalo Bills to do. And you know what? That take is aging perfectly. Because look at what Caleb Williams is looking like with Ben Johnson. A massive upgrade. Look at what happened to the Eagles defense ever since they got Fangio. A massive upgrade. The Bills could have had that. You think Ben Johnson is turning down the opportunity to work with Josh Allen? You think Fangio doesn't want to be the defensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills? Come on. And the prospect of taking down Mahomes and what? Come on, of course. If you pay these guys enough money, you don't even have to pay them that much money. That opportunity is so grand. But obviously, if you just pay them the money, like make them an offer, they can't refuse. But obviously, that's not the situation that they're in right now. But I don't know how you can keep running it back with the same cast of characters year after year after year. This phrase used to mean something. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. That's now been repeated so many times that it's like lost its umph. But it is true. It is true. You just keep. I mean, it's what the Dallas Cowboys do. Hey, let's just keep doing the same thing again and again and again, and maybe this year it'll be different. It's not happening. It's not happening. So, just a weird situation right now for the Buffalo Bills. Coming off of a brutal loss against the Miami Dolphins, that's when these things are going to start to rise to the top. You're going to start to have these types of conversations right now. But also what's tough for the Buffalo Bills is, because if it's not Brian Daboll, like who is it then? You take a risk on like a Clint Kubiak or a Cliff King, where you take a risk on someone who's now never been a head coach. If you do, like I said before, if you fire Sean McDermott, then defensively, who are you looking to hire in that moment of time? You're most likely not going to be able to like say, hey, well, we're going to take Brian Flores from the Minnesota Vikings. Like that's pretty highly unlikely. And I'm trying to think of any defensive coaches who could potentially be fired. Maybe Mike Tomlin, probably not. Maybe Harbaugh, but I don't see why you'd want Harbaugh in that moment of time, because he struggled as soon as he lost some key defensive coordinators. Yeah, so it's the path isn't super straightforward, but something's got to give. Something has to change. And at the top, it should be a change with Sean McDermott, without a doubt. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills and potential reunion with Brian Daboll? Moving on from Sean McDermott. What do you guys all think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single comment, so they agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.